In the ancient lands of Kalevala, where the forests whispered secrets and the lakes mirrored the stars, there lived a hero known as Lemminkäinen. He was a man of fire and folly, with hair like golden flames and a spirit that burned brighter than the midnight sun. Born to a wise mother who raised him in the ways of magic and might, Lemminkäinen grew into a wanderer, restless and reckless, always chasing glory like a hawk pursues its prey. His laughter echoed through the pines, and his songs could charm the birds from the trees, but his heart was wild, untamed by caution or fear. One crisp autumn day, as the leaves turned to blood-red hues, Lemminkäinen sat by the fire in his humble abode, strumming his kantele, the magical harp that sang of adventures untold. His mother, the sage woman of the north, watched him with knowing eyes. "My son," she said, her voice like the rustle of ancient scrolls, "your thirst for fame will lead you to distant shores, but beware the perils that lurk in the shadows of ambition." Lemminkäinen grinned, his teeth flashing white against his tanned skin. "Mother, what is life without risk? I shall seek the hand of the fairest maiden in Pohjola, the cold realm of the north, and prove my worth to the world." With that, he slung his sword over his shoulder, a blade forged in the fires of old, and set off on his quest, his boots crunching through the frost-kissed earth. The path to Pohjola was no easy trail. It wound through dense woods where wolves howled in the night and rivers raged like angry spirits. But Lemminkäinen pressed on, his recklessness fueling his steps. Along the way, he encountered a band of travelers, weary from their own journeys. "Turn back, bold one," they warned, their faces etched with scars. The mistress of Pohjola, Louhi, guards her daughters with spells and sorcery. Many have sought glory there, only to find doom. Lemminkäinen laughed, a sound that scattered the birds overhead. "Doom is for the faint-hearted. I am Lemminkäinen, the handsome rover, and glory shall be mine." He shared his provisions with them, singing tales of his past exploits, how he had tamed wild stallions with mere words and outwitted giants in games of wit. Inspired, the travelers joined him for a stretch, but soon peeled away, fearing the growing chill that signaled Pohjola's approach. As the landscape shifted from vibrant forests to barren tundras, Lemminkäinen felt the first stirrings of true challenge. Snow began to fall, soft at first, then in swirling tempests that blinded the eye. He trudged forward, his breath forming clouds in the air, humming runes to keep the cold at bay. Finally, after days that blurred into one endless march, he crested a hill and beheld Pohjola, a fortress of ice and stone, where the aurora danced like ethereal warriors in the sky. At its gates stood guardians, hulking figures cloaked in fur, their eyes glowing with unearthly light. "Who dares approach the domain of Louhi?" one bellowed, his voice rumbling like thunder. Lemminkäinen stepped forth, undaunted. "I am Lemminkäinen, seeker of glory and suitor to the maiden Kyllikki." He drew his sword, not in threat, but in salute, and began to sing a ballad of his lineage, weaving words that made the guardian's weapons lower slightly. But Louhi herself emerged from the shadows, her form twisted and powerful, eyes like chips of obsidian. "Foolish wanderer," she hissed, "to win my daughter's hand, you must prove your mettle through trials that have broken stronger men." Lemminkäinen's heart raced with excitement. This was the peril he craved, the glory he sought. The first trial was set, to hunt the demon's elk, a beast with antlers that pierced the clouds and hooves that sparked fire on the ground. With a nod, Lemminkäinen ventured into the frozen wilds, his senses sharpened by the thrill of the chase. The elk was elusive, darting through blizzards and over treacherous ice fields. Days turned to nights as he pursued it, his body aching from the cold, but his spirit unbroken. Cleverly, he crafted skis from enchanted wood, gliding silently to close the gap. At last, in a clearing under the moon's pale gaze, he cornered the beast. With a mighty leap, he wrestled it to the ground, binding it with ropes spun from his own hair, infused with magic. Triumphant, he dragged it back to Pohjola, where Louhi's eyes narrowed in surprise. One trial down, she conceded, but two remain. The second trial demanded he capture the fiery horse of Haisi, a steed that breathed flames and galloped across lava rivers in the underworld's fringe. Undeterred, Lemminkäinen descended into the misty borders of Tuonela, the land of the dead, where shadows whispered temptations. The horse was a blaze of fury, its mane crackling like wildfire. Lemminkäinen approached with caution, singing lullabies that cooled its rage, then mounted it bareback, riding through infernos that singed his cloak. Back at Pohjola, he presented the tamed beast, his face smeared with soot but his smile radiant. Louhi grumbled, "Impressive, but the final trial will test your soul. Bridle the Swan of Tuonela, swimming in the black river of death." This task struck a chord of unease in Lemminkäinen, for Tuonela was no mere wilderness. It was the realm where life faded into eternity. Yet his recklessness propelled him forward. He journeyed to the river's edge, where the waters ran dark and silent, guarded by spirits of the departed. The swan glided gracefully, its feathers as white as fresh snow against the inky flow. As he waded in, the cold gripped him like iron chains, pulling at his vitality. Whispers of doubt assailed him. "Turn back, reckless one. Glory is not worth oblivion." But Lemminkäinen pressed on, crafting a net from reeds blessed by his mother's runes. With a swift throw he ensnared the swan, but in the struggle a hidden arrow from a lurking foe pierced his side. Pain exploded through him, and the world dimmed as he sank into the depths. Back in Kalevala, his mother sensed the peril through her mystic bonds. "My son!" she cried, gathering her herbs and spells. She set out on a desperate quest to retrieve him from the jaws of death, her love a beacon against the darkness. In Pohjola, Kyllikki, the maiden he sought, heard of his fall and felt a pang of sorrow for the bold suitor she had yet to meet. The trials had woven a web of fate, and now the true peril unfolded. As Lemminkäinen drifted in the cold embrace of Tuonela's river, visions of his life flashed before him. Childhood games in sunlit meadows, battles won with wit and blade, the unquenched fire of his wanderlust. But death's grip was relentless, pulling him deeper into the void where forgotten heroes slumbered. Meanwhile, his mother arrived at the river's bank, her face lined with determination. She consulted the ancient spirits, bargaining with offerings of honey and incantations. "Reveal my son's fate," she demanded. A raven perched on a skeletal branch croaked the truth. Lemminkäinen's body lay mangled by beasts in the underworld, his blood staining the eternal snows. Undaunted, she forged a rake from copper and iron, enchanted to comb the depths. Day and night, she dragged the river, piecing together his shattered form limbs, torso, head until he lay whole but lifeless on the shore. With salves brewed from the essence of bears and bees, she anointed him, chanting runes that echoed through the realms. Slowly, color returned to his cheeks, and his chest rose with breath. "Mother," he whispered upon awakening, his voice hoarse from the grave, "your love has snatched me from peril once more." Grateful yet unbroken in spirit, Lemminkäinen vowed to complete his quest, but wisdom tempered his recklessness for the first time. Returning to Pohjola under the cover of night, disguised as a humble bard, he sought Kyllikki not through trials, but through the power of his heart. He found her in the gardens, where flowers bloomed defiantly against the frost. Her beauty was like the dawn breaking over icy peaks, her eyes holding the depth of northern seas. "Fair maiden," he sang softly, his cantelli weaving melodies of longing and adventure. Kyllikki listened, captivated, her initial wariness melting like spring snow. "You are the wanderer who braved death for glory," she said, a smile touching her lips. "But what of love amid the peril?" Their courtship blossomed in secret, stolen moments under the aurora, where they shared dreams of a life beyond quests. Yet Louhi discovered them, her rage igniting like a storm. "You dare defy me?" she roared, unleashing spells that summoned blizzards and beasts. Lemminkäinen fought valiantly, his sword flashing as he slew wolves and evaded ice shards. Kyllikki aided him with her own magic, inherited from her lineage, binding winds to their will. Together, they escaped Pohjola, racing south on the fiery horse he had tamed. But glory's call was not silenced. Whispers of a greater peril reached them, a war brewing in Kalevala, where the Sampo, the magical mill of fortune, was coveted by dark forces. Lemminkäinen, now bound to Kyllikki in love, felt the pull of duty. "We must aid our kin," he declared, his recklessness reignited but now shared. They journeyed home, facing ambushes from Louhi's minions, trolls that blocked passes, eagles that clawed at the skies. In one fierce encounter, atop a mountain pass, Lemminkäinen battled a giant serpent sent by Louhi, its scales gleaming like polished steel. With Kyllikki's encouragement, he struck true, severing its head and claiming its fangs as trophies. Their bond grew stronger through each trial, transforming his solitary quest into a shared saga. Upon reaching Kalevala, they found Väinämöinen, the wise elder, preparing for conflict. "Lemminkäinen, your return from death marks you as a true hero," Väinämöinen said. "Join us in safeguarding the Sampo." The reckless wanderer nodded, his eyes alight with purpose. The battle erupted at the borders, where Louhi's army of shadows clashed with Kalevala's defenders. Lemminkäinen charged into the fray, his war cries echoing, sword dancing in deadly arcs. Peril surrounded him, arrows whistling past, spells crackling in the air. In a pivotal moment, he faced Louhi herself, her form shifting like mist. "You stole my daughter and defied fate," she snarled, hurling bolts of darkness. Dodging with agile grace, Lemminkäinen countered with songs of binding, weakening her magic. Kyllikki, from afar, amplified his runes, turning the tide. As Louhi retreated, the Sampo shattered in the chaos, its fragments scattering prosperity across the lands. Victory was bittersweet, glory achieved, but at the cost of scars and losses. Lemminkäinen stood amid the ruins, Kyllikki by his side, reflecting on his journey from reckless youth to tempered warrior. In the aftermath of the battle, Kalevala basked in newfound peace, the fragments of the Sampo bringing bountiful harvests and endless light to the days. Lemminkäinen, once the lone wanderer, now found solace in domesticity with Kyllikki. They built a home by the shimmering lakes, where their laughter mingled with the songs of birds. Yet the fire in his soul flickered still, whispering of untamed horizons. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped below the pines, a messenger arrived from distant lands. "Great hero," the envoy pleaded, "a monstrous pike terrorizes the seas, swallowing ships and souls. Only one of your valor can slay it." Kyllikki's eyes filled with worry. "Must you chase every peril?" she asked, her hand on his arm. Lemminkäinen hesitated, the weight of love clashing with his innate recklessness. "Glory calls, my love, but I promise to return." With a kiss that held the promise of forever, he set sail on a vessel crafted from enchanted oak, his cantel strapped to his back. The seas were vast and unforgiving, waves crashing like giants' fists. Storms raged, testing his resolve, but he sang to calm the waters, drawing on lessons from his near death in Tuonela. After weeks of navigation, guided by stars and intuition, he reached the pike's domain, a churning vortex where the beast lurked. The pike was enormous, its jaws wide as caverns, eyes glowing with primal hunger. Lemminkäinen dove into the depths, armed with a harpoon forged from the serpent's fangs. The battle underwater was a symphony of chaos, bubbles exploding, currents pulling at limbs. The pike snapped at him, missing by inches, while he struck at its flanks, drawing ichor that clouded the water. Exhausted but fierce, he lodged the harpoon in its throat, twisting until the monster thrashed no more. Surfacing with its jawbone as proof, Lemminkäinen was hailed as a savior by coastal villages, his glory spreading like wildfire. But peril had its price. A wound from the fight festered, slowing his return. Delirious with fever, he washed ashore in a foreign land, where healers tended him with herbs unknown. In his dreams, he saw Kyllikki waiting, her face a beacon. Upon recovery, he hurried home, only to find unrest brewing anew. Louhi, ever vengeful, had allied with shadowy entities to reclaim the Sampo's power. Kalevala was under siege once more, farms ablaze, people fleeing. Lemminkäinen arrived in the nick of time, rallying the warriors with tales of his sea conquest. "We fight not for glory alone, but for our homes," he shouted, his voice inspiring even the weariest. The conflict escalated to the heart of the forest, where ancient trees stood as silent witnesses. Louhi's forces, augmented by demons, pressed hard. Lemminkäinen led a daring ambush, using his knowledge of the wilds to outmaneuver them. In the thick of battle, he confronted a demon lord, a being of smoke and fury. Their clash shook the earth sword against claw, rune against curse. With a final, reckless charge, Lemminkäinen pierced its core, banishing it back to the voids. But victory came at a cost. Kyllikki, fighting alongside, was struck by a stray spell, her life hanging by a thread. Desperate, Lemminkäinen carried her to his mother, who wove healing magic through the night. As dawn broke, Kyllikki stirred, her eyes meeting his. "Your quests have brought us here," she whispered, "but perhaps it's time to wander together, not apart." Lemminkäinen nodded, the perils of his past forging a new path. Years passed in Kalevala, where Lemminkäinen's tales became legends told around flickering fires. He and Kyllikki raised children with spirits as bold as their fathers, teaching them the balance between glory and wisdom. Yet the wanderer's heart never fully quieted. One winter's eve, an oracle's vision foretold a final peril, a cataclysmic rift opening between worlds, threatening to swallow the north. Only the reckless one who has danced with death can seal it. The seer intoned. Lemminkäinen, now grizzled but unbowed, knew this was his destiny. Bidding farewell to his family, he embarked on the ultimate quest, armed with artifacts from his adventures, the swan's bridle for binding, the pike's jaw for strength, his mother's runes for protection. The rift lay in the farthest north, beyond Pohjola, where the sky tore like fabric, spilling chaos, twisted creatures emerging, skies bleeding unnatural colors. Lemminkäinen traversed wastelands, facing illusions that preyed on his regrets, visions of lost comrades, echoes of Kyllikki's pleas. His recklessness, once a flaw, now a tool, propelled him through despair. At the rift's edge, guardians of the void awaited ethereal wraiths that drained life with a touch. He sang battle songs, his kantele amplifying the runes, dispersing them like mist. Stepping into the breach, he felt the pull of oblivion, similar to Tuonela's grasp. With all his might, he chanted the sealing spell, weaving threads of reality to mend the tear. The effort drained him, his body aging decades in moments, hair turning silver, strength waning. As the rift closed with a thunderous clap, Lemminkäinen collapsed, the world saved but his glory eternal. Spirits carried him home, where Kyllikki and his kin awaited. Though weakened, he lived out his days in peace, sharing stories that inspired generations. His recklessness had led to perils untold, but also to a legacy of heroism. In the end, Lemminkäinen found that true glory lay not in quests alone, but in the love and wisdom gained through them. The wanderer rested, his spirit forever roaming the myths of Kalevala,